In 1961, a man walked into a basement laboratory at Yale University to take part in what he believed was a simple study on memory and learning. He had no idea he was about to discover something terrifying about himself. He was told he would play the role of teacher. Another man, sitting in a separate room, would play the student. Every time the student answered a question wrong, the teacher was instructed to deliver an electric shock. Each wrong answer increased the voltage. The switches on the machine in front of him were labeled clearly, all the way up to a final switch marked simply danger, severe shock. The student was an actor. The shocks were never real. But the man in the teacher's chair did not know that. As the voltage increased, the student began to cry out in pain, then to beg, then to scream that he had a heart condition. Then, finally, silence. The man sitting at the controls had no way of knowing if the silence meant unconsciousness or worse. And yet, when the man in the lab coat standing beside him said simply, "Please continue, the experiment requires that you continue," most people did exactly that. This is one of the most replicated, most disturbing findings in the history of psychology. And before you assume you would have stopped, you should know what the research actually found. Psychologist Stanley Milgram designed this experiment in 1961, motivated by a question that haunted an entire generation after World War II. How did ordinary German citizens participate in atrocities under Nazi rule? Were they simply evil, or was something else happening? Something that could happen to anyone, anywhere, given the right conditions. Before running this, Milgram asked his colleagues to predict the results. Nearly all of them believed almost no one would go all the way to the maximum lethal-sounding shock. They believed decent people simply would not do that to another human being. They were wrong. In Milgram's results, 100% of participants delivered at least 300 volts. 65% continued all the way to the final 450 volts, the setting explicitly marked as dangerous, severe shock. 2 out of every 3 ordinary people with no history of violence, no diagnosed cruelty, continued administering what they believed were excruciating, possibly lethal shocks to another human being, simply because a man in a lab coat told them the experiment required it. Before you tell yourself you would have been different, consider this. The participants were not soldiers. They were not criminals. They were teachers, postal workers, engineers, salesmen, regular people recruited through a newspaper advertisement who walked in expecting a simple psychology study and walked out having learned something most of them never wanted to know about themselves. So why does this happen? Why would a normal, otherwise kind person continue hurting someone simply because they were told to? The answer is not that humans are secretly cruel. The answer is older and stranger than cruelty. For almost the entire span of human history, survival inside a group depended on something specific: recognizing who held authority and deferring to them quickly and without hesitation. In a small tribal band, questioning the decision of a leader in a moment of danger could get you killed. Not by the leader necessarily, but by the predator, the rival tribe, or the disaster the leader was trying to respond to. There was rarely time for democratic debate when a group needed to flee, fight, or freeze in unison. Psychologists studying obedience describe what happens next as entering what is called an agentic state. The mind shifts from seeing yourself as the author of your own actions to seeing yourself as an instrument carrying out someone else's will. You stop asking, "Is this right?" and start asking, "Am I doing what I was told correctly?" This shift is not a personal failure. It is an ancient cognitive mechanism, one that almost certainly helped your ancestors survive moments when hesitation, second-guessing, or moral debate would have gotten the entire group killed. Inside Milgram's lab, that mechanism activated in an environment it was never designed for. There was no real danger, no real authority with the right to demand obedience. Just a man in a white coat, a confident tone of voice, and a series of small, escalating steps that made stopping feel harder with every passing moment. This is one of the most important details of the entire study. Participants were never asked to jump straight to 450 volts. They started small, 15 volts, barely noticeable, then 30, then 45. Each new shock was only slightly worse than the one before it. This is sometimes called the foot in the door effect. Once you have agreed to a small request, agreeing to a slightly larger one becomes easier, not because the larger request seems acceptable on its own, but because refusing now would mean admitting the earlier choices were wrong. Your brain works hard to maintain consistency with its own past decisions. Admitting your 5th decision was a mistake means admitting your first 4 might have been too. In a small ancestral group, that consistency mattered immensely. A person who appeared erratic, who reversed their commitments constantly, who could not be relied upon to follow through, was a liability. Reliability, even rigid reliability, was rewarded with trust, food, alliance, and protection. Inconsistency could mean exile. So your mind evolved to resist reversing course, even when reversing course is exactly the right thing to do. Layer onto this another ancient mechanism, diffusion of responsibility. When someone else is clearly directing the action, your brain quietly shifts the moral weight of the outcome onto them. Milgram's participants frequently said afterward, "I was just doing what I was told." This is not necessarily a dishonest excuse. Many genuinely experienced the event that way because the agentic state had partially disconnected their sense of personal authorship from the action itself. This single mechanism explains far more of human history than most people realize. Atrocities, corporate scandals, cult behavior, and ordinary workplace compliance with decisions employees privately disagree with all draw from this same ancient wiring. Not because humans are evil, because humans evolved in small groups where defying a trusted authority figure carried catastrophic risk, and that calculation still runs quietly in the background of your mind today. Here is what should genuinely unsettle you. People in Milgram's study were not uniquely weak or unusually obedient. The experiment has been repeated with variations across dozens of countries and cultural contexts, and the results remain disturbingly consistent. The capacity to keep going, even past the point of clear moral discomfort, appears to be a default setting of the human mind, not a rare flaw found only in certain people. Knowing this does not make you immune to it, but it does change something important. Researchers who study obedience have found that the single most effective protection against this mechanism is simply being aware that it exists. Participants who had previously studied Milgram's findings were measurably more likely to resist the pressure to continue because they recognized what was happening to their own thinking in real time. So the next time someone in a position of authority asks you to do something that feels wrong, pause. Notice the agentic state trying to take hold. Notice the quiet pull toward consistency, the urge to keep going simply because you have already gone this far. That pull is not weakness. It is 200,000 years of social survival wiring activating in a world it was never built for. The man in that Yale basement in 1961 did not think of himself as capable of hurting another person for a stranger in a lab coat. Neither did most of the others who kept going. The uncomfortable truth Milgram uncovered was never really about a handful of unusual people. It was about the rest of us.